speaking of keeping yourself on the straight and narrow, you recently quit drinking alcohol recently, right?
Yeah.
Welcome to the club. Yeah. Welcome to the club,
Thanks,
my friend.
man. I saw your video. I don't remember if it was right before I quit or right after, but it was, it was one of those things where there was a series of events over about 2 or 3 weeks. I saw your video. I saw the Huberman put out his podcast about alcohol, which was very eyebrow raising. Had a couple conversations with friends who had quit alcohol recently. And then I had a personal event, which, I was a heavy drinker pretty much my entire adult life.
What does heavy drinker look like?
I was a party hound, right? So anytime I went out, when I was younger, any bar or club or party I went to, I drank a lot. As I got older, that kind of turned more into restaurants, fine dining, trips, vacations. It was just alcohol for me always. If you took something fun, alcohol made it more fun. And if you took something boring, it made it less boring. So I pretty much always found some sort of justification like, it'd be great right now, a drink. But I think for me, it hit, and I'm a very functional drunk. It never, I know some people have, it causes a lot of problems in their personal or professional lives. For me, it was always, it never interfered massively. Where it actually started to interfere for me was in physical health. I started gaining a ton of weight. I went to a doctor, got blood work done. The doctor was like, shit, this is the blood work of this is a blood work of a man like 30 years older than you. You might want to take a look at your habits. So all that was kind of going on in the background. I started losing weight, cleaning up my diet. That also meant drinking less. And then, and around this time, some friends of mine were kind of experimented with quitting drinking. I had hired a health coach who was kind of encouraging me to maybe give it up, stop for 3 months or 6 months. And then I remember I went to an event, and it was an event I signed up for and paid for. And I ended up hanging out at the bar. The first night I ended up hanging out at the bar with a few guys that I had met, and just got absolutely plastered, just fucking shit faced. And I was so drunk, I couldn't get up and go to the event the next day. And I remember just laying in bed in the hotel room being like, this is the dumbest fucking thing. I paid thousands of dollars to be here, and I feel so awful. I can't even be here. Right. So it was kind of in the air, it was percolating. And, so I gave it up end of July last year. Initially I was going to do 3 months. The 3 months was so amazing that I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the end of the year. Went to the end of the year, drank at New Year's just to see what it felt like. Overrated. And so my goal for 23 is to actually go do all of 2023 without a drink.
Let's fucking go. Dude, that's so good. Yeah. It's the exact experience that I had as well. So throughout most of my 20s, running nightclubs, 1,000 events, stood on the front door, big party boy, similar to yourself. And then I realized this isn't really serving me. Again, was propelled by a very bad hangover one day and thought, right, just the memory of this hangover will get me through the first month. And then I only have another 5 to do after that. Committed to 6, went back to drinking, didn't really like it all that much, wasn't very enamored with it. Found that the progress that I made when I was sober was more addicting than the enjoyment of the party when I went back to drinking.
Absolutely.
Came back onto drinking, did another 6 months, then thought, right, well, I must have done my sobriety stint now. I must have got it all out of my system. Went back to drinking for a month and a half. And this is once every 2 weeks. This isn't me drinking consistently. And thought, this sucks. And then did 1,000 days. And that was what I did the video about. But yeah, it is such a game changer for a vestigial party boy to go through, because you just open up all of this consistency, time, money, calories to spend on things that you genuinely care about, energy, everything that you care about in your life gets better when you go sober. And this is from two people who had their drinking like relatively under control, right? Alcohol's the only drug where if you don't do it, people assume you have a problem. And the problem that both of us had was lifestyle or productivity / health based, but it wasn't dependency based. So it's the easiest of the letting goes, you know, compared with almost everybody else that attempts to go sober. And if they can do it, we definitely can do it.
Yeah, for sure. And I vastly underestimated the effects it would have on my energy, my focus, my motivation. One of the things that stood out to me that Huberman said in his episode is he said that if you've been a heavy drinker, and I think researchers define heavy drinker as, I think it's 15 drinks a week.
Which for some people is one night out.
Yeah, right. I'm like, that's an average. That was an average week in my 20s. He said at least 15 drinks. You know, if you've been a heavy drinker for multiple years, he said that it can take 6 to 12 months for your system to actually entirely reset, for your brain to go back to the way it was, your internal organs to go back to the way they were. And I was like, God damn, I've been doing this basically since I was like 18, right? Like, so half my life, almost 2 decades. And it's incredible. It's incredible. It was, I'd say, within a few weeks, waking up with more energy, sleeping like a baby. You know, and one of the things, you know, I had cut back quite a bit before I quit completely. I'd say I'd cut back to drinking maybe 2-3 times a month. And when I drank, it was like just 2 or 3 glasses of wine. And it's funny, like I feel like something you notice when you cut back that you don't notice when you keep drinking heavily. Like when you drink heavily, you just expect to feel like shit. So when you feel like shit, you're like, oh yeah, well, of course I drank a lot. But when you drink very moderately, it actually showed me how much it affects you. Like I would go out and have 2 glasses of wine with dinner, and not only would I feel maybe 20% worse the next day, I would feel 10% worse the day after that. And that was shocking to me. I was like, whoa, this is actually, it's not about hangovers. It's about just general lack of energy and motivation on a day-to-day basis. And it lasts for multiple days. So yeah, it's been an eye-opener. I think it's underrated. I feel like it's becoming a thing. I've been really shocked and surprised how many friends of mine who, without talking, like people that I haven't seen in 6 months, I hang out with them and they're like, oh, I quit drinking, by the way. And I'm like, what? Me too. Holy shit. Like that's probably happened 3 or 4 times just in the last year, completely spontaneously. So I feel like it's something that is becoming almost trendy among, I guess, people who care about productivity and accomplishing things.
So one of the interesting things, it would make a good bit of sense for someone that's in their 30s like me and you, perhaps, to dial this back, especially if you're not going out and trying to pull every night and going to clubs and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. What is maybe even more interesting is the trend that I'm seeing amongst younger people who would have taken their sense of self-worth from their degeneracy, like me and you might have done. And even those people, even the Gen Zers, are also seeing going out and getting absolutely lathered as not exactly a high status pursuit.
Yeah, it's funny. I've seen this a few times on social media over the last few years, but I always find it amusing. It's somebody posts a chart and it's like alcohol consumption, sexual activity, maybe illicit drugs thrown in, and it's a chart of like generations, like how much each generation had done it by age 18, and it's a consistent trend downwards. And Gen Z does it the least of all. They do sex, drugs, and alcohol less than any other generation before. And the people who post this chart, they like complain about the kids. They're like, wow, kids are so boring these days. They're like on their phone all the time. They should get out and have some real fun.
Why aren't they having some heroin and unprotected sex? Come on now, kids. Where are you?
I'm like, wait a second. When the hell did this turn into a criticism? Like when I was growing up, it was, everything was like, don't drink, don't do drugs, don't have sex. And that's all we wanted to do. It's really funny how it's like somehow flipped almost.
Yeah, I mean, the behavior that me and my housemates considered high status 15 years ago when I was at uni would have been how drunk you got the night before, whether you woke up in a bush, if somebody got an injury. I actually did my master's dissertation on this. It was the effectiveness of anti-alcohol advertising on students at Newcastle University. And what I discovered was that a lot of students saw these painful experiences as badges of honor. They were almost like a rite of passage that everybody went through. If we were 21-year-old Mark and 21-year-old Chris ring each other and say, man, how was last night? And you go, dude, it was amazing. John lost an eye. And you're like, what? Like that would be an unironic way that we would go about talking about stuff. What's happening, people? If you enjoyed that, then press here for the full unedited episode. And don't forget to subscribe. Peace.